to Pica Poco Kitchen. Today we're making impossible cake, aka Choco-flan. Vámonos! Impossible cake or Choco-flan is precisely that. Flan plus chocolate cake. If it were a person, it would be the Hannah Montana of desserts, the best of both worlds. Or would that be Miley? Anyway, it is difficult to trace back to its origin. Some people attribute it to the Italians, the French, the Venezuelans, Peru, and of course Mexico. And if there's something that we Mexicans love, is flan. And of course, that wouldn't be chocolate cake without chocolate. And there would not be chocolate without Mexicans. So today, I'm just gonna attribute it to us. Impossible cake calls to our spirit of birthday celebration. Anytime you go to a birthday party, you'll receive a plate with both a slice of cake and a slice of a gelatinous dessert, which can be either a jello or a flan. So I like to think that a person who was very busy in the hustle and bustle of organizing a birthday party decided, you know what, I'm not gonna trouble myself, I'm gonna make it practical and put both desserts together, and boom, this chemistry magic trick came out of it. The name Impossible Cake comes from the effect that it has when you bake it. When you pour the batters into your mold, you start by putting the cake and then the flan on top. But when you bake it, they invert themselves because of the density of the batters. The flan being more dense and heavy, and the cake being more light and with more air structure. And that is the whole magic about this cake. It is a fairly easy dessert to make, very practical, like I said, and evidently delicious. So let's get to it. The first thing we need to do is prep our mold. On the first hand, we need to grease it up to make sure we have a good release. I'm using butter, and I'm gonna come back with a paper towel and some just neutral oil to rub it well, but you can use shortening or any other cake release mixture that you normally use. Just make sure to go in every nook and cranny and get a nice coverage. And now we're gonna add the caramel for the flan. In my case, I like to use cajeta, not just because it's simpler, but because it is my favorite type of caramel. As you can see, I have the least standing of my cajeta. I did warm it up for 30 seconds in the microwave so it would release a little bit faster. And you really don't need that much. Remember, we're just gonna have half the flan, so you don't need a lot of caramel. You can of course go the classic way and melt 1 cup of sugar in your stove until you get a golden brown. Don't let it turn too dark, otherwise your caramel will taste bitter. I'm using a little spatula to rub it on the bottom of the pan, and don't forget the center if you're using one like mine. And now we can leave that aside. Let's move on and make our chocolate cake. I have half a cup of cocoa powder, and all of my dry ingredients I'm gonna pass through a sieve to get an even powder. This is a very simple cake. I'm gonna add 1.5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. You could use cake flour if you want a more airy crumb, but I like the density that all-purpose flour gives to the cake. Also, don't forget to add a pinch of salt. Whisk your dry ingredients and let's move to the wet ones. I have 1 cup of granulated sugar that I'm gonna whisk with half a cup of oil. I want the sugar and the oil to integrate well. This will hydrate the sugar and everything else will be easier to mix in. Once that's done, I'm gonna start by adding my eggs one at a time. In total, I'm using 2 eggs. Make sure to mix well the egg until it's perfectly combined and then add the second. Now we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1 shot of espresso. Wait until it's cold to add it. Give it a nice mix and bring in your dry ingredients so we can start adding them in 3 parts. And if you're in a hurry or you don't want to be bothered about making the cake, you can absolutely use a box cake. Even try different flavors if you want to. Come in with a spatula to clean the bowl and we're gonna pour this right on top of the caramel in our mold. Try being cautious when pouring your batter, do it carefully and spin your mold around. If you get any of the batter on other sides of your pan, you can clean it up with a napkin. And you may be wondering, why are we pouring this on top of the caramel? But that's the magic of this cake. And that, my friends, is where the impossible becomes possible. And for the flan, couldn't be simpler. You're gonna need 1 can of evaporated milk, 1 can of sweet condensed milk, 5 whole eggs, some cream cheese, which can go from the 8-ounce bar or half of it. It's really up to you. It helps balance the sweetness of the flan and make it even richer in creaminess. So you can absolutely leave it out or add as much as you want. Vanilla extract, of course, and all we have to do is blend everything in together. And that's pretty much it. And with no hesitation and no complication, we simply add everything. Making flan requires very little effort. And now I understand why my mom, who really doesn't enjoy cooking, especially the washing part, would always make flan whenever she needed to. And now that we have that mixed, we're gonna come back to the cake and pour it over the cake batter. If you pour the flan mixture on top of the batter too rapidly and with too much force, you risk the mixing, creating an uneven division. So I suggest you using a spoon or a spatula to reduce the impact of the flan coming on top of the batter. I decided not to use all of the flan mixture because I was worried on how much rice my cake would have. So I added the rest of my flan into 2 ramekins. Take a piece of foil big enough to cover your pan and cover it with a thin layer of oil. This is the side that's gonna be in contact with the cake. This will help you with anything getting stick to the foil. Cover your pan well and make sure that all the ends are folded up so the water from the bottom of the bain-marie won't travel to the inside of your cake. Find a deep enough container that it's oven proof and secure your mold in it. Once you have that secure, you're gonna fill with boiling water all the way to half of your mold. Be extremely careful and preferably do that inside your oven. I will do the same for my 2 flan ramekins, and while we wait for 1 hour in a 350-degree oven, I'm gonna enjoy a cup of tea. After 45 minutes, take out your ramekins, and after an hour, take out your cake. Remove the foil, and as you can see, oiling it helps a little bit with the sticking of the cake. I will check for doneness to see how much more I need to put it back in the oven. At this point, mostly is done, except for the center part. So I'm gonna put it back in the oven for 10 minutes more just to settle and to have a nice bottom part of the cake. After it's cooled off, I'm gonna cover it back up and put it on my fridge at least for 2 hours, but preferably overnight. With water as hot as my tap goes, I'm gonna sit my pan on it to help it release. If you're using sugar caramel, then I suggest you to go for hotter water. And now the moment of truth. Drum roll, please. And after singing victory and sighing for relief, here it is. Impossible cake. And here you have it. I love the look of it, especially when we get this very clean line between the cake and the flan, and that is thanks to the slow and careful pouring of the flan over the cake batter. I'm so happy it came out unmolded pretty well. So don't forget to grease up your mold, especially use one that doesn't have any scratches and that you know it works for you every time. I also love how the little caramel puddles on top of it. You could go even further and put some pecans on top, some cherries, some whipped cream, whatever you want, or even chocolate sprinkles. And like I said, you could go for a sugar caramel, a milk caramel, or cajeta like I did, which is my favorite. So let's give it a try. And no matter how many times I make it, I always get very nervous 2 moments. When I take it out of the oven, peel off the foil just to see that they inverted, and when it comes to the unmolding itself. It breaks me every time. I get very nervous, no matter how many times I make it. So if it doesn't happen, it's all right. Just still enjoy it because I bet it's gonna still be delicious. But I'm pretty sure you're gonna nail it. Let's dig in. The cake is chocolate forward, very intense, delicious. It is not super sweet, but it works well with the sweetness of the flan because the flan is creamy and sweet, so it's just a perfect balance. And the flan, oh, the perfect texture. You know what? When my dad had a restaurant, my mom used to make flan for them, and she would make around 10 flans per week. I got so sick of flan, and I couldn't even look at it for years. But now I just see flan, think of my mom, and oh, what a delicious treat. So now you know how to make it. So if you have a birthday coming up or a party, or you just want to enjoy any day of the week, give it a try. And if you enjoy this recipe just like this video, please share it with your friends, like, because it helps me with my channel, subscribe, and be notified. And for more, follow me on the socials. Adios, amigues.